Welcome to a video that could awaken something deep within you. Today, we will explore the 5 stages of spiritual awakening according to Carl Jung, a transformative journey that can completely change the way you see the world and yourself. From the initial confusion to the integration of your most authentic self, each stage brings you closer to your inner truth. Have you ever stopped to think about which stage of your spiritual awakening you are in? This process is not just a journey, it's an evolution that can redefine your life. Join us and discover how these stages can illuminate your path and open new doors to a more conscious and meaningful future. Get ready for a deep journey toward your true self. Do you want to know what stage of this transformative journey you are in? Spiritual awakening often begins with an existential crisis that deeply challenges a person's internal beliefs and structures. This crisis can come in the form of emotional suffering, health issues, the loss of a loved one, or drastic life changes. For Carl Jung, the initial crisis is the point where the conscious psyche begins to be shaken by the unconscious, triggering what he calls the process of individuation. The person begins to feel that the world as they know it is no longer enough, and a feeling of emptiness and disconnection arises. This moment of rupture with the former reality can be profoundly disturbing. Jung describes it as the collapse of the ego, a structure that has controlled and defined the individual's identity up to that point. According to Jung, the ego is the conscious self that has been constructed over time through social, familial, and cultural conditioning. However, beneath this surface lies the unconscious, which contains repressed and hidden aspects of the psyche that begin to emerge during the crisis. This process was documented by Jung in his famous work, The Red Book, where he himself experienced a spiritual crisis after his break with Freud. He delved deeply into his unconscious, confronting images and symbols that completely overwhelmed him. It was through this personal collapse that Jung began to discover the immense power of the unconscious and the crucial role it plays in the process of spiritual transformation. During this crisis, individuals may experience feelings of loss, confusion, anxiety, or depression. However, Jung maintained that these symptoms should not be seen solely as pathological. In fact, the suffering that accompanies the crisis is a sign that something new is emerging from the depths of the unconscious. For Jung, the crisis is the gateway to individuation, the process by which a person begins to integrate all parts of themselves, including those that have been denied or repressed. Spiritual awakening then begins with the collapse of the old ego structures. This collapse can manifest in many forms, but all share the commonality of a rupture with the beliefs and ways of life that previously defined the person. In this sense, the initial crisis is both an ending and a new beginning. The previously ignored unconscious begins to send signals through dreams, synchronicities, or intuitions, pushing the person to confront their true self. In summary, the initial crisis is a painful awakening that marks the beginning of a profound transformation. While it is a challenging and often overwhelming stage, it is essential for spiritual growth. It is the call of the unconscious, an invitation to explore the deepest and most forgotten parts of the self, and to begin the process of individuation. For those going through this stage, it is important to remember that while difficult, this is the first step toward integration and psychological wholeness. After the initial crisis, the next step in spiritual awakening is the descent into the unconscious, where the person must confront their shadow. In Jungian theory, the shadow represents all the repressed or rejected aspects of the psyche. These may be emotions, desires, or traits that the person does not accept because they do not fit with the image they have of themselves or that has been imposed by society. The descent into the unconscious involves immersing oneself in these dark, painful, and often terrifying parts of oneself. Confronting the shadow is a crucial process in spiritual awakening because only through integrating these repressed aspects can one move forward toward individuation. The shadow is not inherently bad. Although it may contain elements we consider negative, such as aggression or jealousy, it can also contain positive aspects we have denied, such as talents and abilities we have not allowed ourselves to explore due to fear or insecurity. During this descent, the shadow often manifests in dreams, visions, or even projections of these repressed aspects onto other people. For example, we might feel an intense aversion towards someone for no clear reason, when in reality that person reflects aspects of our own shadow. In the context of Jungian psychology, dreams play a crucial role in this stage. They are a direct window to the unconscious and show us, through symbols and metaphors, the aspects of our psyche that need to be integrated. The descent into the shadow is not an easy process. Jung described it as a journey to the underworld, similar to ancient myths where heroes must descend into the depths to gain wisdom or power. This journey is full of obstacles and challenges, as the conscious ego resists confronting the aspects of itself it has rejected for so long. However, this confrontation is necessary for spiritual growth. Jung described it as a step toward wholeness, where the individual no longer identifies solely with their ego, but embraces all parts of their being, both the light and the dark. It is important to remember that the shadow does not simply disappear when confronted. The key is to integrate it into the conscious psyche. This means accepting these aspects of oneself without judgment, giving them a place in the person's overall identity. Often, the process of integration is accompanied by a great release of energy, as the energy that was used to repress the shadow is freed, allowing for greater creativity and vitality. The descent into the unconscious and the encounter with the shadow is one of the most difficult stages of spiritual awakening. It requires courage, patience, and a willingness to confront parts of oneself that may be uncomfortable or painful. However, it is also one of the most transformative steps. Through this process, the person begins to shed the masks they have worn to protect their ego and starts to experience greater authenticity and inner freedom. The next phase of spiritual awakening is the death of the ego, a process that Jung described as a symbolic death necessary for the emergence of a new version of the self. In alchemical terms, this corresponds to the phase of mortificatio, where the ego must be dissolved or destroyed so that something new can emerge. This death of the ego does not mean the destruction of identity, but rather its transformation into a broader and deeper form that includes both the conscious and the unconscious. The ego, which until now has been the center of conscious identity, is a construct that has been based on limited beliefs, values, and experiences throughout life. The ego has protected itself from anything that might challenge its control. However, in this phase of awakening, the ego must surrender. It is a painful process because the ego is accustomed to having control. The death of the ego involves letting go of old beliefs and thought patterns that no longer serve, allowing the true self to begin to take control. Jung saw this stage as a confrontation with emptiness. It is a moment when the person may feel completely lost, without any of the old certainties that once guided them. During this process, the individual may experience great confusion or despair. However, this is the point where real transformation begins. Logically, it is the moment when the hero has descended into the underworld and must face death in order to be reborn. One of the most powerful symbols Jung used to describe this transformation is the mandala, which represents the totality of the being. The mandala is a symbol of the self, the integration of all parts of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious. During the death of the ego, the old self, which was fragmented and controlled by the ego, must dissolve so that a more complete and unified version of the person can emerge. This process is deeply transformative and liberating. By letting go of the ego, the person stops identifying with their social roles, material success, or personal achievements. They begin to experience a deeper connection with their true self, which is not limited by external expectations or social conditioning. This new identity is not defined by fear, but by a sense of freedom and authenticity. Although it is a difficult stage, the death of the ego is essential for spiritual awakening. It is the point at which the person truly begins to connect with the collective unconscious and to experience life from a broader perspective. The synchronicities that once seemed like isolated events become a regular part of life, signaling that the person is aligned with the flow of the universe. The ego has lost its control, but in return, the person has gained a new understanding of themselves and their place in the world. Rebirth is the phase that follows the death of the ego. After confronting and accepting the shadow and dissolving the ego, a new identity emerges, which Jung called the self. The self is the totality of being, an integration of all parts of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious. It is the ultimate goal of the process of individuation, in which the person is no longer internally divided, but has achieved a union of all their facets. This rebirth is not simply a new beginning, but the result of a deep transformation. The individual no longer identifies solely with their ego, but has integrated repressed aspects of their personality, as well as broader parts of their unconscious. The self, symbolically represented by the mandala, is the image of psychological wholeness. It is a state of inner balance and harmony that allows the person to live more authentically and fully. Rebirth involves a new way of relating to the world. The person is no longer trapped in the old patterns of behavior controlled by the ego. Instead, there is greater fluidity and flexibility in how they interact with others and their environment. This stage is often marked by a profound sense of inner peace and a connection to a higher life purpose. The person feels they have found their true essence and can live from a place of authenticity. During this process, the symbols and archetypes of the unconscious continue to play an important role. Dreams remain a valuable source of guidance and knowledge as the unconscious continues to communicate with the conscious mind. However, rather than being seen as strange or frightening, they are now understood as messages from the totality of the self. Jung believed that this state of integration is one of the highest goals of spiritual awakening. Rebirth also carries with it a sense of responsibility toward the world. The person no longer lives only for their own desires and needs, but feels a deeper connection with others and with the universe. In this state of integration, the individual feels called to use their knowledge and wisdom to help others on their developmental journey. This is the moment when the wisdom gained through the previous stages begins to manifest in concrete actions and in the way they live. In summary, rebirth is a deeply transformative stage that marks the culmination of spiritual awakening. The individual has passed through the fire of suffering, confronted their darkest aspects, and emerged as a more complete version of themselves. In this state of integration, the person is no longer divided between their ego and their unconscious, but has unified all parts of their being. This stage is the culmination of the process of individuation and marks the beginning of a life lived with greater authenticity, purpose, and connection to the universe. After spiritual rebirth, the final stage of the awakening process is the transformation of the world. Spiritual awakening is often seen as something that happens internally, but Jung firmly believed that the true test of spiritual awakening is how it reflects in everyday life. This stage is about bringing the new consciousness and the integration of the self into the external world, into relationships, work, and community. The person who has experienced spiritual awakening no longer lives solely for their own desires and needs, but feels a deep sense of purpose. This purpose is not necessarily about grand gestures or achievements, but about living in accordance with the deepest values of the self and contributing to the well-being of others. Jung believed that individuation was not just a personal process, but also an act of service to humanity. By integrating the unconscious, the person not only transforms themselves but also helps to transform the world around them. In this stage, synchronicities become a natural part of daily life. The person no longer sees the world as separate from their inner psyche, but perceives a deep connection between their inner state and external events. This is the essence of synchronicity, a key concept in Jung's work, which describes how events in the outer world seem to mysteriously align with a person's internal state. It is as if the universe is responding directly to the individual's process of internal transformation. Additionally, this stage involves a greater capacity to live in the present moment. The person is no longer trapped in the memories of the past or in worries about the future. Instead, there is a sense of fluidity and openness to what life has to offer. This is a sign that the person has achieved a balance between their inner world and the outer world and is in harmony with the flow of the universe. The transformation of the world does not mean that the person must abandon all responsibilities or withdraw from social life. On the contrary, Jung believed that true spiritual awakening involves fully participating in the world, but from a place of greater awareness and authenticity. This can manifest in acts of compassion, creativity, or simply in the ability to be present for others. The person who has reached this stage of spiritual awakening becomes a beacon of light to those around them, not because they consider themselves superior, but because they have integrated their own darkness and by doing so can guide others in their own process of individuation. Finally, the transformation of the world also involves a new relationship with the universe. The person feels part of something greater, a deep connection with the totality of existence. This sense of unity is one of the most important characteristics of spiritual awakening. In this state, the person feels that everything they do has a purpose, and that every action, no matter how small, contributes to the well-being of the whole. Carl Jung considered dreams to be one of the most direct ways to access the unconscious, an essential part of the spiritual awakening process. Instead of viewing dreams as mere fantasies or mental waste, Jung believed they contained profound and symbolic messages from the hidden layers of our psyche. For Jung, dreams were a form of dialogue between the conscious ego and the unconscious. Through them, the unconscious reveals repressed desires, unresolved conflicts, and spiritual truths that the conscious ego often ignores. During the process of individuation, dreams become essential tools for understanding the inner state of the dreamer. Jung argued that dreams should not be interpreted literally, but as archetypal symbols that offer clues on the path to wholeness. These dreams often contain characters or situations that represent different aspects of the psyche, such as the hero, the shadow, the anima, or the animus. These archetypes are universal symbols that reside in the collective unconscious, a term Jung used to describe the deepest part of our mind shared by all of humanity. Dream interpretation is a crucial part of spiritual awakening, as it provides access to unconscious content that might otherwise remain outside of consciousness. As a person progresses in their awakening process, dreams may become more intense, detailed, and filled with symbolism. These dreams often reflect the state of the psyche, showing which aspects of the unconscious are emerging and need to be integrated. Jung emphasized that recurring dreams, or those that provoke a strong emotional reaction, are particularly important and should be interpreted carefully, as they indicate unresolved psychic issues that require conscious attention. For example, a common dream in the process of spiritual awakening is descending into a dark cave, a symbol representing the journey into the underworld of the psyche, where the repressed aspects of the self are found. Another recurring symbol is death, which does not necessarily imply a literal event, but the death of the ego, or the end of a phase of life, preparing the ground for spiritual rebirth. Jung suggested that people should record their dreams and analyze them patiently. In his own practice, he kept a dream journal where he recorded his dream experiences and worked with the symbols that arose. This habit not only helped him understand his own process of individuation, but also allowed him to develop his theory on archetypes and the collective unconscious. Jung was one of the first psychologists to argue that dreams have therapeutic value, not only because they reflect a person's psychic state, but also because they provide creative solutions to problems we face in our conscious life. For those on the path of spiritual awakening, dreams can be a valuable guide. While the symbolic language of dreams may be confusing at first, learning to decipher their messages allows the unconscious to reveal its deepest secrets. Jung believed that by interpreting our dreams, we can uncover the keys to integrate the fragmented aspects of our psyche and advance in the process of individuation. Furthermore, dreams often anticipate a person's psychic future, showing what is yet to come and how we can prepare for internal and external changes. In this stage of spiritual awakening, dreams play a crucial role, not only as a reflection of the inner state, but as a compass that guides us on our journey toward wholeness. Those who pay attention to their dreams and learn to interpret them will discover a treasure of hidden wisdom that can facilitate the integration of the unconscious and lead to greater self-knowledge and spiritual growth. In summary, dreams are the bridge that connects our conscious life with the vast ocean of the unconscious, revealing the path to a more authentic and fulfilling life. As one deepens in spiritual awakening, one of the most surprising phenomena Jung describes is the emergence of synchronicity, which plays a central role in the life of a person undergoing individuation. Jung defined synchronicity as the meaningful coincidence of two or more events that, while not causally related, are deeply connected by their meaning. This phenomenon suggests that there are invisible forces operating in both our inner and outer worlds, and that these two aspects of reality are mysteriously interconnected. To understand synchronicity, it is important to see the world from a broader perspective that transcends traditional materialism. In Jungian thought, synchronicity defies the idea that only cause and effect relationships exist. Instead, it shows that the psyche and the material world are in a constant state of interaction, and external events may reflect internal processes. These seemingly impossible coincidences may manifest at moments of great personal crisis or transformation, acting as signs or guides that indicate the person is on the right path. Jung saw synchronicity in his own life as well as in his patients. One of the most famous examples is that of a highly rational patient who repeatedly dreamed of a golden beetle. During a session, while discussing one of her dreams, a similar beetle suddenly appeared in the room, tapping on the window. This synchronous event was a turning point in therapy, as it helped the patient break through her rational resistance and open up to the deeper aspects of her psyche, ego control, and limited notions of the individual self. This phenomenon reflects an essential spiritual truth. The world is not separate from us. On the contrary, it is deeply intertwined with our internal experience. Synchronicity occurs when our inner world aligns so precisely with external events that it becomes impossible to ignore its meaning. It is as if the universe itself is speaking to us, using everyday symbols and events as a language to guide us. This phenomenon can be subtle, such as finding a book exactly when we need it, or it can be as striking as meeting someone at the exact moment we need a relationship or connection to drive our personal growth. Jung believed that synchronicities are especially common during spiritual transitions, when we are ready to integrate important aspects of our psyche. For example, someone who has worked deeply with their shadow may begin to notice that people or events reflecting these same struggles appear in their life. This type of synchronicity serves as a mirror, helping the person realize that what they have worked on internally is now emerging in the external world. This phenomenon can be so powerful that it completely transforms a person's perception of life. Those who frequently experience synchronicities often report feeling a deeper connection with the universe, as if the material world has become permeable to their deepest emotions, thoughts, and desires. This reinforces the sense that we are not alone, but are part of a larger fabric of universal meaning. Jung considered synchronicities to be signals from the collective unconscious, showing that our lives are aligned with a greater purpose. Synchronicities also act as landmarks in the individuation process, offering clarity in moments of doubt. When a person faces an important decision or life change, synchronicities can arise as subtle responses from the universe, confirming that they are on the right path. In this sense, these coincidences are not mere accidents, but a kind of cosmic feedback ensuring that our actions, thoughts, and emotions are aligned with our spiritual destiny. For those who have advanced in their spiritual awakening, learning to recognize and accept synchronicities is a way of living in harmony with the universe. Rather than struggling for control or rational understanding, it is about opening up to the possibility that invisible forces are guiding our lives. This openness to the inexplicable allows us to move more fluidly through the world, trusting that, even though we may not always understand what is happening, there is a higher order directing the flow of events. In conclusion, synchronicity is a key phenomenon in the spiritual awakening process described by Carl Jung. By transcending traditional cause and effect relationships, it reveals a world where the psyche and material reality are in constant dialogue. When we learn to recognize and work with these meaningful coincidences, we begin to live in a more connected and fulfilled way, trusting that the universe is always collaborating in our journey toward individuation and higher purpose. After the rebirth of the self and the integration of unconscious aspects into consciousness, the next phase of spiritual awakening is the return to the world. In this stage, the individual is no longer focused exclusively on their inner journey, but begins to bring the learnings and wisdom gained back into their daily life. It is a crucial transition where spiritual awakening ceases to be an abstract or isolated experience and becomes a lived practice in every aspect of daily life. Jung described this phase as the point at which the person returns to the external world with a renewed awareness, having gone through the process of individuation. Through this integration, the person has reconciled the conscious and unconscious and can now act from a place of greater authenticity. The true challenge in this stage lies in applying newfound knowledge to the realms of relationships, work, and community life. This is where the individual must strike a balance between their inner and outer worlds, an essential task according to Jung for living a full and meaningful life. The self, now the core of the psyche that represents wholeness, becomes the central force from which the individual interacts with the world. Decisions are no longer driven by the insecurities of the ego or social conditioning, but emerge from a deep sense of authenticity and alignment with spiritual purpose. This shift can be seen in how the individual approaches work, creativity, personal relationships, and their role in the community. Every action, no matter how small, now carries a sense of purpose and inner harmony. Returning to the world also brings a transformed relationship with suffering and challenges. The individual who has undergone spiritual awakening no longer avoids pain or difficulty, but views them as opportunities for continuous growth and transformation. This change in perspective is one of the greatest gifts of spiritual awakening. Rather than being controlled by egoic desires or fears, the person now faces obstacles with a deeper understanding that every experience is a necessary part of the journey toward wholeness. In this phase, the individual may also feel compelled to share their wisdom, not in a didactic way, but through their presence and actions. Jung believed that the true sign of individuation occurs when a person begins to use their inner knowledge to help others find their own path. This service to others is not motivated by a desire for approval or recognition, but arises from a natural sense of compassion and connection with fellow human beings. Spiritual awakening in this sense is not an isolated journey. It is a transformation that impacts the world as a whole. Moreover, returning to the world also involves embracing the present moment. The person who has integrated their unconscious is no longer trapped by past memories or future projections. Instead, they experience life with fluidity and openness to what the here and now offers. This state of presence enables the individual to engage with the world in a more authentic and connected way, free from the distractions of the ego. It manifests in an increased capacity to appreciate the small things, build deeper relationships, and approach challenges with serenity. Additionally, the return to the world involves a heightened ability to recognize and work with the synchronicities that unfold in everyday life. Rather than seeing events as separate and external, the individual begins to perceive a continuous flow of communication between their inner and outer worlds. This understanding nurtures a more intuitive way of living, where decisions are guided not just by rational thought, but by unconscious insights and the signs the universe provides. In conclusion, returning to the world after spiritual awakening is the culmination of the individuation process. The individual who has undergone this transformation no longer lives based on external expectations or egoic desires, but acts from a place of authenticity and spiritual connection. It is at this point that spirituality stops being an internal quest and becomes a lived practice in all areas of life, from relationships to work and service to others. This is a state in which the person feels fully aligned with their purpose and the flow of the universe, contributing to a more conscious and interconnected world.